He wasn't supposed to stop that day. Ethan Cross, the ruthless CEO known for closing million-dollar deals, without blinking, walked into the hospital for a board meeting, not a breakdown, but fate doesn't check schedules. When a nurse accidentally handed him a patient's chart, one line froze his world: no emergency contact. Then his eyes fell on the name written below it: Clara Hayes. His heartbeat stuttered. The name he'd buried 5 years ago, the woman he'd once loved and lost. Moments later, he found her pale, unconscious, a shadow of the woman who once made him believe in forever. And just outside the room stood a little boy clutching a toy car, eyes too familiar to ignore. That's when Ethan realized destiny hadn't ended their story. It had just been waiting for him to show up. Ethan Cross didn't believe in coincidences. He believed in control. Control over his empire, over his time, over emotions he'd locked away years ago. But that morning, as the elevator doors opened into the gleaming corridors of St. Luke's Hospital, control was the last thing he had. He was there for a partnership meeting, a simple PR gesture, nothing more. His company had funded the hospital's new pediatric wing, and he was supposed to sign a few papers, shake a few hands, and leave. No distractions. No drama, just another scheduled formality. But fate has its own ways of catching you off guard. As Ethan waited in the hallway, a nurse brushed past him, accidentally dropping a stack of patient files. Instinctively, he bent down to help her. "Sorry, sir, these are confidential," she said, flustered, trying to gather the pages quickly. One folder slid near his shoe. The tab read Hayes. Clara. He froze. No, it couldn't be. He picked it up before the nurse could stop him, his eyes scanning the page. The first thing he noticed wasn't the details, it was the emptiness. Under emergency contact, a single phrase stared back at him. None listed. And beneath that, her name, typed neatly in black ink: Clara Hayes. His throat tightened. It had been 5 years since he'd last heard that name out loud. 5 years since he'd walked away, choosing ambition over love. She'd begged him to stay back then, to slow down, to live a life that wasn't all about power and deals. He hadn't listened. He'd told himself she was better off without him, but now, seeing her name in a hospital file, fragile, alone, no emergency contact, something inside him broke. Is she okay? His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. The nurse frowned. "Sir, you shouldn't be looking at that, please," he interrupted, his tone desperate, his usual composure slipping away. "Is she alive?" The nurse hesitated, then nodded softly. "She's stable, room 37. But she has no listed family. We've been trying to reach someone." He didn't think, he didn't breathe, he just moved past the nurse station, past curious stares until he stood at room 307. Through the glass, he saw her. Clara. Even after all these years, he recognized her instantly. The soft curve of her face, the chestnut hair now slightly thinner, the same calmness in her stillness. But now there was something else: exhaustion, as if life had drained too much from her. Machines beeped softly beside her, and the fourth dripped slowly into her arm. Ethan's breath hitched. He reached out, hand trembling, pressing it lightly to the glass, afraid that if he went in, she might vanish again, like a memory he didn't deserve. Then, a small voice behind him broke the silence. "Are you here for Mommy?" Ethan turned sharply. A little boy stood there, maybe 6 years old, wearing a tiny hoodie 2 sizes too big, holding a toy car in his hand. His eyes, a sharp blue-gray, were hauntingly familiar. The same eyes Ethan saw in the mirror every morning. For a moment, time collapsed. He crouched down slowly, voice gentle. "Your mom is Clara Hayes." The boy nodded, clutching his toy tighter. "Yeah. The doctors say she's tired. They say she needs rest." He frowned. "But she's been resting for 2 days now." Ethan's chest ached. "Do you live with her?" The boy tilted his head. "Mostly. Sometimes the neighbor lady helps when Mommy's sick, but Mommy says my dad's far away, that he's busy doing big, important things." Each word hit harder than the last. Ethan swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What's your name, buddy?" "Liam," the boy said proudly. "Liam Hayes." Hayes. The world blurred for a second. His mind flashed back to Clara's laugh, to the night he'd told her he wasn't ready for marriage, for family, for love that would slow him down. She'd cried that night. He'd walked away, and now, standing here, he was staring at the proof of everything he'd lost, and everything he never knew existed. He rose slowly, looking back into the hospital room. The woman inside looked peaceful, unaware that her past had just walked back into her life, and that the man who broke her heart was standing beside the son she'd raised alone. A doctor approached. "Sir, Are you family? Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. I'm an old friend, he managed, his voice shaking. I just found out she was here. The doctor nodded sympathetically. She'll wake up soon. Her vitals are improving, but she's been through a lot. Stress, exhaustion, mild pneumonia. He glanced at the boy. She's strong though. That little one keeps her going. Ethan looked down at Liam, who was now sitting quietly on a bench, drawing on a piece of paper. A crude sketch, a house, 2 stick figures, and a heart. He pointed to one of them. That's me and Mommy, Liam said. Then, shyly, but I left a space here, for when Daddy comes home. Ethan couldn't breathe. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor echoed softly in the hospital room as the morning sunlight filtered through pale blue curtains. Ethan hadn't moved all night. He sat by the glass wall, suit jacket folded on a chair, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion etched across his face. He hadn't planned to stay, but every time he thought about leaving, his eyes found the little boy asleep on the couch, hugging his toy car, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't walk away again. Clara stirred for the first time just after sunrise. Her fingers twitched, her head turned slightly, and then slowly, her eyes opened. The same hazel eyes that once saw right through him. Ethan stood immediately, heart pounding. Clara. Her gaze darted around the room, confusion clouding her face. Where am I? Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. You're at St. Luke's Hospital, he said gently, moving closer. You fainted. They said it was exhaustion, dehydration. She frowned, her breathing uneven. Who her voice caught, her eyes focused. Ethan. He froze. Hearing his name on her lips after 5 years, it was like a wound reopening. I didn't mean to shock you, he said softly. I saw your name on a file. I didn't know, she blinked, struggling to sit up. You shouldn't be here. Her tone wasn't angry, just tired, resigned, like someone who'd run out of the strength to fight old ghosts. I know, he said, his voice rough, but when I saw your name, and saw that there was no one listed as your contact, I couldn't just walk away. Clara turned her head toward the small couch. Liam was still asleep, curls falling over his forehead. You shouldn't have stayed, she whispered. You've got your world, your empire. You don't belong in mine. Ethan's throat tightened. Maybe not, but that doesn't change what's true. Her brows furrowed slightly. What's true? He took a hesitant step closer. That I never stopped thinking about you. That leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. For a moment, the room fell silent except for the faint hum of machines. Clara looked at him, eyes softening just a little. You left because you didn't want a family, Ethan. You said love makes people weak, and I was foolish enough to think I could change your mind. Her words hit him like bullets. I was wrong, he admitted, completely wrong. People don't change overnight, she said quietly. You walked away when I needed you the most. He hesitated, then asked, in a trembling voice, was it around that time? Clara's eyes flickered fear, guilt, hesitation, all at once. She looked at Liam, asleep under a blanket, then back at Ethan. You don't get to ask that. Clara. He stepped closer, voice barely audible. He's my son, isn't he? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She tried to look away, but the silence between them was answer enough. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. His knees nearly gave out. He turned toward Liam again. Those familiar blue-gray eyes. That same half-dash smile. Everything suddenly made sense. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Clara's voice cracked. Because you made your choice, Ethan. You said there was no room in your life for love, or children, or anything that wasn't profit and power. I wasn't going to beg you to stay and pretend you wanted this. He shook his head. You should have told me. And then what? She snapped softly. So you could send money, so you could ease your guilt while still living your perfect CEO life. I didn't need your pity. He didn't need a father who saw him as an obligation. Her tears fell freely now, and Ethan's own eyes burned. I would have been there, he said hoarsely. If I'd known you weren't ready, she interrupted, her tone trembling. You couldn't even handle love, Ethan. How could you handle being a father? The truth in her words silenced him. He had no defense, only regret. He looked down at Liam again. The boy stirred in his sleep, murmuring something about airplanes. Ethan smiled faintly. He likes planes. Clara wiped her eyes. He loves them. Says he wants to be a pilot one day. He builds little ones from scraps. Ethan's heart squeezed. He'd spent his whole life building skyscrapers, chasing the sky, and the son he never knew was dreaming of flying. Clara lay back, exhausted. Please, just leave before he wakes up. I don't want to confuse him. Ethan stood silently for a moment, then nodded. All right, but I'm not disappearing again. Not this time. She didn't respond. She just turned her face away, tears soaking the pillow. Ethan walked to the door but paused when a small voice called out, "Mommy." Liam rubbed his eyes and looked up, noticing Ethan. "Hey, you're still here?" Ethan turned, forcing a gentle smile. "Yeah, I wanted to make sure you and your mom were okay." The boy's eyes brightened. "She's the strongest person in the world." Clara smiled faintly through her tears. "That she is," Ethan whispered. Liam tilted his head. "You sound like you know her." Ethan knelt beside him. "Yeah, I used to." Liam thought for a moment. "Mommy says Daddy's far away, but maybe he just got lost." Clara's breath caught. Ethan's eyes filled. "Maybe," Ethan said softly, "but sometimes when people get lost, they find their way back, if they're lucky." Liam smiled sleepily and leaned against his mother's bed. Ethan straightened, swallowing hard. "Take care of him, Clara." She looked at him, really looked this time, and whispered, "I always have." He nodded slowly and turned toward the door. But as he stepped into the hall, one thought burned in his mind. He wasn't walking away this time. This time, he was going to fight for her, for the boy, for the family he never knew he had. Ethan hadn't slept in days. Ever since he left that hospital room, the echo of Clara's voice, "You couldn't handle love, Ethan. How could you handle being a father?" kept looping in his head like a curse. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about meetings, deals, or stock prices. He only cared about one thing, the truth. He'd sent his assistant a single message: find the hospital's DNA testing department. He didn't tell Clara, and he didn't tell himself it was wrong. He just needed to know by the end of the week. He was back at St. Luke's. Liam was sitting in the pediatric lounge, coloring with the nurse who had become his temporary guardian while Clara recovered. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said softly, crouching beside him. Liam's face lit up. "You came back." Ethan smiled, a real one this time. "I told you I would." They spent the next hour talking about toy airplanes, superheroes, and how Liam wanted to fly higher than buildings. Ethan listened to every word like it was the most important conversation he'd ever had. When the nurse stepped out for a call, Ethan gently took Liam's small hand. "Can I tell you a secret?" Liam nodded eagerly. "I think you're really special," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "And sometimes, special people help others find what's missing." Liam grinned. "Like a puzzle." Ethan chuckled softly. Exactly like that. He'd never realized how much warmth the child's laughter could bring. How it could melt every wall he'd built. Later that day, when the nurse collected Liam for lunch, Ethan met with the hospital's genetic specialist. The man handed him an envelope. "The test results you requested, Mr. Cross." Ethan took a long breath before opening it. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He unfolded the paper, eyes scanning the numbers, and froze. Paternal match, 99.98%. He didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or fall apart. He just whispered, "My son." For a long time, he stood there, completely still, the world fading into white noise. All the skyscrapers he'd built, the boardrooms he'd dominated, none of it mattered now. He had a son, and he hadn't been there when it mattered most. That evening, Ethan went back to Clara's room. She looked stronger now, sitting up, sipping tea, though her eyes still carried exhaustion and worry. When she saw him, her expression hardened. "Ethan, I told you." He held up the envelope. "You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know." "I know." Her hand froze midair. "What do you mean?" He placed the paper on her bedside table. "The truth, Clara, he's mine." She looked away, silent for a long moment. Then softly, "You had no right to do that." "I had every right," he said, voice breaking, "because for 6 years, I've been living a lie I didn't even know existed, and I won't waste another day of it." Clara's lips trembled. "Do you think this fixes everything? That knowing suddenly makes you a father?" "No," he said quietly, "but it gives me a chance to be one." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. "You don't know what it took to raise him, Ethan. The nights he was sick, the birthdays I couldn't afford presents for, the fear that if I called you, you'd hang up." He stepped closer. "I deserve every ounce of your anger, but don't take away my chance to make it right." She shook her head. "And what happens when your world gets busy again? When business calls and he's not part of your schedule?" Ethan's voice dropped, low and raw. "Then I'll tear the schedule apart." Her breath caught. "I've spent my whole life building towers that touch the sky," he said, eyes glistening, "but none of them ever felt like home. That little boy, he is my home." The silence that followed was heavy but softer than before. Then, a small knock interrupted them. Liam peeked in, clutching his toy plane. "Mommy, can Mr. Ethan come see the sunset with us?" Clara turned to him, then looked back at Ethan, hesitation in her eyes, but no anger. "Go ahead," she said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly and walked with Liam to the hospital balcony. The sky was bathed in orange and gold, the city lights flickering below. Liam leaned on the railing, holding his plane up toward the fading sun. "When Mommy gets better, can we go flying for real?" Ethan knelt beside him. "Yeah," he whispered, voice breaking. "We'll fly as high as you want." The boy grinned, and Ethan felt something in his chest shift, not pain, but peace. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he'd just found. That night, before leaving, Ethan stood at Clara's doorway again. "I know I can't erase the past," he said softly, "but I'll prove to you, and to him, that I'm not walking away this time." Clara's eyes softened. "Words are easy, Ethan." He nodded. "Then I'll show you with actions." He placed a small envelope on her bedside, a trust fund, a private caretaker's card, and a note that simply said, "You're not alone anymore." Then he turned and left, not as a CEO but as a man finally ready to earn back what he lost. 2 weeks later, St. Luke's Hospital felt less like a place of pain, and more like the beginning of something Ethan never knew he'd needed. Clara had been discharged, though still weak, and Liam was finally home, a tiny apartment tucked above a flower shop downtown. Ethan hadn't left the city once. His company board was confused. The CEO, who never missed a meeting, hadn't stepped into his glass tower in days. But Ethan didn't care. For once, life outside the office mattered more. Every morning, he brought groceries. Every afternoon, he picked Liam up from daycare. And every evening, he stayed just long enough to help Clara climb the stairs or listen to Liam's endless chatter about planes, superheroes, and silly jokes. Clara resisted at first. Pride and pain held her back. She didn't want his money. She didn't trust his promises. But slowly, quietly, she saw something she hadn't expected. He was changing. No bodyguards, no chauffeured cars, no business calls, just a man showing up every single day. One night it rained hard, the power flickered, and Clara's old apartment filled with candlelight. Ethan had come by with soup and medicine. Liam was drawing at the table, humming softly. Clara looked at Ethan across the dimly lit room. "You don't have to keep doing this." He smiled faintly. "I want to. You have a company to run." "I have a family to fix," he replied. Her breath hitched. He continued, "I spent years pretending I didn't need anyone, that I was too strong for love, too focused for family, but I was just scared of losing control." Clara looked down at her hands. "And what if I can't forgive you? Then I'll keep trying," he said simply, "every day, until you do." The sincerity in his voice was something she hadn't heard before. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't a promise of wealth. It was raw, human truth. The thunder rolled outside. Liam crawled onto the couch between them, holding his blanket. "Mommy, can Mr. Ethan stay till morning?" Clara hesitated, then whispered, "Just tonight." Liam smiled, curling up against Ethan's arm, small, safe, unaware that the world around him was healing, one heartbeat at a time. Days turned into weeks. Ethan found himself doing things he never imagined, learning to cook pancakes, helping Liam with homework, laughing at cartoons he used to find annoying. He didn't know when it happened, when guilt stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like purpose. Clara began to notice too. His eyes no longer carried the cold calculation of a businessman, they carried warmth, patience, love. One evening, she found him on the balcony, teaching Liam how to fold paper airplanes. "Like this," Ethan said, showing him carefully. "You fold it with both hands. Everything worth flying takes both." Clara watched silently, the symbolism hitting deeper than she wanted to admit. Later, after Liam fell asleep, Ethan stood by the window, gazing at the city lights. "I used to think success meant having no weaknesses," he said softly, "but loving you? It makes me stronger." She turned to him, tears glimmering. "You broke me once, Ethan. You don't get to fix me with words." He nodded, stepping closer. "Then I'll fix it with time." For a moment, neither spoke. The city below hummed softly, life moving on as two hearts cautiously reached for what they'd once lost. Then Clara whispered, "He deserves a father who stays." Ethan's voice cracked. "Then I'll stay, as long as you'll let me." Months passed. The morning sun poured through Clara's small apartment. But it wasn't so small anymore. Ethan had renovated it quietly, carefully, without changing the warmth she loved. Flowers lined the balcony. A small model airplane hung from the ceiling. Liam ran into the living room in his school uniform. "Mommy, Dad's making pancakes again." Clara smiled. "Dad?" she asked. "Teasingly. Liam shrugged. "He said I could call him that if I wanted. And I want to." Her chest tightened. For the first time, the word didn't sting, it felt right. Ethan turned, apron on, flipping pancakes with a grin that didn't belong to the man she once knew. It belonged to the man she'd always hoped he'd become. "Morning," he said gently. "Coffee's ready." Clara sat down at the table. For a few seconds, she just watched them, her son laughing, Ethan pretending to burn a pancake on purpose, their laughter blending like music, and for the first time in years, her heart didn't ache. It felt whole. She reached for his hand across the table. "You kept your promise." Ethan looked at her, eyes soft. "No, Clara. You gave me a second chance to keep it." That evening, as the three of them stood on the balcony, Liam pointed to the sky. "Look, my plane's still flying." Ethan smiled, watching the paper plane disappear into the sunset. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it's flying home." Clara looked at him, the orange glow painting his face in gold. Maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about finding someone who once got lost and letting them come home. And as Liam laughed beside them, her fingers brushed Ethan's. No hesitation, no distance, just forgiveness, finally given. Sometimes, life brings us back to the people we were never supposed to lose. Ethan thought success meant never looking back, but one hospital chart changed everything. He didn't just find the woman he broke once. He found the family he was always meant to protect. If this story touched your heart, if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, then hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss another story that reminds you, love doesn't need perfection, just presence. Tell me in the comments, do you think Clara should completely forgive Ethan, or should she take more time? Your answer might inspire the next story. #Millionaire love story. #emotional drama. #family healing. #second chance love. #heart touching story. #CEO romance.